Let's record. Awesome. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I got a special guest, Mr. Lucas Robinson. He is a fitness coach working online and in person in Oakland, California, if I'm not mistaken. But we connected through, the online trainer mentorship. We've chatted off and on. I feel like you and I have talked a lot lately, which has been great because I loved getting other perspectives about things. But Lucas, thanks for taking the time, man, and being on the podcast.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Like what I love to do to start off is always kind of kicking into your story, man. So like what got you into fitness in the first place?
Yeah. So I've been probably lifting weights off and on since I was about 20. Not that was always regular. Like there weren't like bouts where I, became inconsistent, but I was a baseball player from when I was 8 to 25, like in terms of like on a team, in terms of, high school, collegiate, things like that. Didn't really take fitness that seriously during. I mean, I would have bouts of, taking it more seriously and losing weight, things like that. But in my later 20s, I was introduced to CrossFit. I think a lot of people in the fitness space, probably in their 30s and 40s, probably attribute it to that. Maybe, it got so big, if you think like 2008 to like 2015-ish. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine who I actually now coach, which is crazy, took me to San Francisco CrossFit. I lived in the city. And I was just doing like the regular 24-hour fitness thing, while going out on the weekends and drinking and smoking cigarettes. I really liked CrossFit. I don't know that I really like that much, was like, oh, it's so competitive. Because when you come from like playing, no offense to CrossFit Games athletes, like what I consider more of a real sport. We can get into why I don't think it's a real sport. I just liked, I liked everyone I hung out with. People became my friends. I really liked it a lot. I liked what it did for my body, even though like my outside of the gym habits were kind of crappy. And then around 2010, I started talking with my best friend who was a professional baseball player, and he was starting a baseball academy. And one of my other friends, we were just all thinking like, well, what if we did something where, that was when it was like, oh, you just open a gym and everyone comes. Like, that was the thought process, right? Like just open your CrossFit gym. You're going to have 1 million members tomorrow because it was so popular. So in 2011, we opened, with the money we had, we were able to rent out like 2 days a week. We could get like an hour in this, like basically a batting cage.
Wow.
So it was supposed to be like CrossFit 650 / Baseball Academy. I mean, long story short is that partnership didn't work out. Like we realized that none of them were helping the other. So we just split off. Now my buddy's Baseball Academy is thriving, and he's a college coach now. So we opened that gym. That gym had some iterations where we changed the name because CrossFit name started to mean like injuries. So from 2011 to 2019, the gym was open. The last year of it, we were an OPEX gym, which was more like individual design, like one coach, one client type of a thing.
Okay.
Once that closed, 2019, I started, that's where I had to decide, okay, well, what's my next move? I got a job at a gym around the corner from like where I was living with my wife. It was like, I would call it like a boutique gym, like, it's like semi-private training, like circuit group classes, expensive. It was in an expensive area of the city, it was high price, memberships.
Sure.
Late in 2019, I just realized I don't really want to be subject to someone else's rules. I really liked everyone there. I loved the owner. Like he works his ass off, but it was more like, I didn't want to have to deal with like, I'm going away on a trip and like, am I allowed to go? So I have the PTO, and like my wife works for Salesforce, but for the most part, she can go work anywhere because they're online indefinitely.
Yep.
Like forever, basically. So, and I wanted to do it on my own. I didn't want to be subject to like, here are the rules of how you have to train people type of a thing.
Yeah.
So what's funny is basically I made that decision in late 2019, and a couple months later, it's COVID.
Wild,
So
eh?
since 2020, I've been trying to build it up. I'd be lying if I said it's exactly what I want it to be financially, but I feel like if I'm not like beating myself up about it, and if I'm looking at have I made an impact, I feel like I really have with clients. Current clients I just had a client the other day, a former client, text me saying, "Hey, I did Murph on Memorial Day, and I've never done it without pain." And I attribute that to the time we had together because we only ended a few months ago. So I think I'm making an impact in that way. So that's kind of currently where we're at. I just came through OTA. That's where we met. I did a launch. I got 2 clients from that, I wanted a bigger launch, but my 2 clients are kicking butt. Like they're averaging right now about 18.5 pounds of weight loss.
Jeez.
And that's in a 12-week period. And one of them is only in week 9. So
Wow.
who knows where he's going to go, but that's where I'm currently at. Coming into summer. Athlete into a coach who it seemed like a good idea to open a gym because everyone's doing it. It's probably easy. It's not.
Yeah, fair.
And now an entrepreneur on my own, in year 4 of basically being at home all the time. So it'd be hard to go back to like a brick and mortar at this point. So that's kind of my current journey. And I still actually at almost 42, I still play baseball in a hardball wood bat league right now. Live with my wife here in Oakland. We have a nice house here in Oakland, and we have 2 dogs, and that's kind of that's the snapshot.
I love it, man. Yeah, I appreciate you showing that. And I do want to jump back. There's a lot of things that you brought up that I want to talk about, but I want to jump back to, you said about playing baseball. You said high school and college level.
Yeah.
But you weren't taking fitness very seriously at the time.
No, like high school, there is no type of program, right? Like we did not lift weights at all for baseball. In high school, I played football for 2 years, didn't start, like got into a couple games. Like I just was not good at football. Wrestling I did to lose weight because I was like the chubbier kid, probably 6th grade through my junior year of high school was that phase. My senior year, I dropped some weight. But yeah, I didn't like working out during baseball season was like go run poles.
Yeah, it wasn't a thing.
Poles is just stay on the warning track and run from, right field to left field and back 20 times. Like that's a picture. That was, yeah. Coaches didn't know what to do, and they're basically like pitchers are supposed to run. It was basically like from the 50s, go run.
Yeah, there's no like fitness protocol for that stuff.
Which isn't wrong, but they didn't know how to give you the right type of running. Like you weren't running fast enough to develop any speed or power. And you usually weren't running slow enough for it to be recovery. It was just, you know what I mean? And then you
drained all the time.
Yeah. And then I would go home and have, I don't know, you're going home and having Hot Pockets. So
yeah. No, the reason I bring that up because like not oftentimes, but from now and again, I'll look back at like, because I played pretty competitive hockey growing up. As a Canadian, naturally, of course, right? But I wish like I had different coaches tell me at different times because I was overweight, I was slower. As a teenager, I was kind of like, yeah, whatever, I'll work on it. And I did improve. I had like skating coaches, I've had trainers, but it was the eating part for me too, where it's like I would just go home and eat shit. Like we'd have pizza buffets and whatever else. But then sometimes I look back, I'm like, I wish I gave it that, extra effort in the fitness side of things that, some of my teammates were doing. It's rare. And I think that's rare for, late teen, early 20s, even for people to focus on fitness when they're involved in team sport, if the team itself isn't really giving you a protocol to do. And I guess most teams probably don't. I mean, for high school students, and you're a little bit older than me, but I imagine like the education side of things there was a huge gap in like you're saying training baseball players to just go run. That's not training. That's just exhausting the players, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thought process was like, you're playing baseball, you don't lift weights.
Yeah.
Football, go lift weights. You know what I mean? Wrestling was just crazy conditioning. I did that for 1 year, and those are still like the hardest practices I've ever done.
I imagine.
You know, you're dry heaving every day. But yeah, there wasn't, I mean, again, like, not to date myself, but like there wasn't internet yet when I was in high school.
Oh shit, fair enough. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I went to high school in the late 90s. Like I was the last, you know, like our class was the last of the millennium type. I graduated in 99 from high school. So I feel like here and there, oddly, my mom sort of was like, yeah, you should have things like olive oil. And I don't think we had bad food in the house. I just think we had food that like I overate too. Cereals and breads and like fat-free frozen yogurt. Like in hindsight, you're like, you're still eating too many calories and drinking like Nestea and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, big time.
Much sugar.
Yeah.
Just the sugar drink. So, and I was a decently active kid. Rode bikes. The first house I lived in with my mom and my stepdad, we had a tennis court. Like my buddy and I would play roller hockey, we'd play strikeout, we'd play basketball, we would go ride bikes, we had a pool. So we did a lot. It was just, I was just eating too much.
Still ate too much, yeah.
Yeah. So, high school and college. When I got to junior college, it still wasn't any sort of structured workout program. I had lost some weight when I got out of high school, though. I took a year where I didn't play baseball. I just worked. And, you know, if I'm honest, I worked and smoked a lot of weed. But I also, a guy that actually I wasn't friends with in high school because I thought he was, you know, kind of an a-hole. He lost a bunch of weight and sort of took me under his wing and we started lifting and I lost like 40 pounds like that year.
Yeah.
And that's when I started like liking to work out. So when I came back to baseball, I was lighter, but then it was still subject to just doing the regular practices. Like, you know, you throw, you go run, we would run hills, you would do wall sits, but like, we didn't really go like lift weights. Every now and then the coach would be like, go lift weights. Or honestly, it's a joke between guys that I still am in touch with from junior college where our coach would be like, you know, we had like a Swiss Army knife coach, junior college. We had our head coach was like the GM who got you your scholarship. The assistant coach, he played AAA for the Yankees, like coached everyone. So he'd be like, pitchers, 20 laps, get out of here. And we're like, that's 5 miles. You know, like, so there wasn't a plan. And then when I went to a Division I school for baseball, Marist, it's in Poughkeepsie, New York. We did have a strength coach. I can't really remember, honestly, because you don't remember everything, what the workouts were like. But there was definitely like go up there and do 30 minutes on the Stairmaster and like, it was basic weightlifting, but I felt like there wasn't any structure like there probably is now. We did have a guy actually come in and talk to us about like doing long, slow distance, hydrating enough. And we kind of just, you know,
shrug it off, right?
Made a joke. Yeah, we made a joke out of it. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm sure now it's so much different because all those places have such better facilities. I'm even trying to make a big push at the place I went to junior college at. I'm trying to get in the coach's ears to be like, can I come talk about habits?
Nice. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we have to get rid of this stigma that like eating good food is like this feminine thing. I think for guys,
really? I never heard that kind of thing before.
I don't know. Not feminine, but here's the scenario I mean.
Yeah, go for it.
It's the 90s, so like, forgive my language, is like you brought like a chicken and some salad to high school, and they're like, "What are you, gay?"
Oh, fair. I see what
I mean, like that type of stuff that can be pervasive. Where it's like, if you're eating burgers and fries, you're fine. If you're having some steak with rice and veggies, they're like, "What are you on a diet?" Like
that's you make fun of you.
It still is like that in these circles. Where now I'm finding I want to go back to some of these places to be like, look, do you want to get paid to go to college, basically? Like, do you want to help your parents not have to cut a check for you? Do you want to not have to take out a loan? Like, I didn't even get a full scholarship, but I was fortunate that my parents it's still a good amount of money. My parents only had to cut about a $4,000 check a semester from me.
That's not bad at all.
Because I got like 70-ish% of my tuition covered because of I was good enough at baseball.
Yeah.
Without doing a lot of the things I should have been doing, like in terms of I was still going out, and you're still going out on the weekends and drinking 40s with your friends, but I at least was better than the average person at like getting, you know, at least getting B's and C's. And like taking care of your business. But now I just feel like there's so much more information now where, this is something I have to try to find avenues into, to go back to places like my junior college to be like, look, you got to take care of business in terms of like getting your schoolwork done and like taking pride in that. Like, don't be on the cusp of being ineligible.
Yeah.
And don't have it where you're breaking down at the end of the season because you're just gaining weight, or you're losing weight because you don't eat enough, you're not working out, or you go in there and like, I know how it is. I went to a few practices and I went into the weight room, and sometimes it's just those guys in there farting around.
Yeah.
They're not doing anything.
Yeah. Well, no structure, no plan. Yeah, that'll happen.
And then when it comes time to be like, well, where am I going for my next 2 years? It's like, so yeah, I think there needs to be like a stigma. I think there's not enough coaches, at least in the baseball realm, that aren't the strength coaches, talking about or wanting their kids to come to their program and become healthier kids. It's like, stop saying I'm game ready. You're 30 pounds overweight. Like, unless you're Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and you are that much talent, like having a belly is not going to like cut it. Like,
yeah.
And I firmly believe, for like my junior college coach used to say to us, he said it with love to like snap you out of it. He said, if you were that good, you wouldn't be here. Like, maybe you're here. Maybe you're here because of grades, and you really are. Like Cam Newton went to junior college, but for the most part, you're here because you weren't good enough to go to USC or Alabama.
To the big ones.
So it's like, you need to work. You need to work your butt off, and you can't be one dimensional. Like, I'm just going to practice hard. Like, it's everything.
Yeah. Well, I think like the burgers and fries thing, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but those eating habits and that stigma has led to guys in their late 30s and 40s right now who are like, shit, like I regret eating like that for my entire adulthood. So it's true. I mean, having an impact on, it's tough when you're a teenager, when you're young, like sometimes you don't want to listen to people telling you, but it's like coming at them and meeting them where they're at, I think is one of the biggest things. Like I've had coaches, I've had trainers, and it's all that stuff is usually based on what the previous generation did. Like what we've always done. It was always spaghetti meals before hockey. That was the biggest thing for the longest time. And I'm like, as I got older, I'm like, no wonder I felt like shit and sluggish, because I'm eating like 120 grams of carbs like an hour and a half before I go skate and on the ice.
Yeah, it's coming from people who don't really know. Like, it's, God bless our parents, but it's our parents being like, gotta carb up or have this or have that, or everything is an opportunity to have treats.
But that's all they were taught too. That's right. It's just passed down. And then the coaches is the same thing. It's like whatever their coach told them, they're going to teach. So you got to kind of break the chain in your scenario.
Yeah. And I rarely, and most guys I played with, usually, or honestly, most athletes, the path is you're done and you gain weight.
There's no exit strategy.
It's kind of like I only worked out because of sport. And then it can become that like, well, looking good isn't like a big deal. It's like, okay, well, you have kids now. Like, you hate to get morbid, but you do go to the, like, you could have a heart attack. You could get diabetes. Like, you could also take care of yourself and have a heart event. It's not a get out of jail free card, but I personally think now, high school coaches, I'm not saying it's an easy task, because it's not, because you have access to them for a couple hours. Do you know what I mean? And then they go off, and like, I remember the kind of food they served in high school, but I just think it's the job. I think we're talking about, I'm specific to baseball. Like, I think coaches should want kids to come there and like learn like habits that they can sustain through a lifetime. Like, it'll also make them a better player when they're with you.
It's true. And
it leads out to past that. Like, I've definitely coached or, given advice to guys I played with or knew and grew up playing baseball with. One of the guys doing my 12-week program, he and I grew up playing baseball together. Like, this area, when you go basically south from San Francisco, like all those cities, they call it like the peninsula.
Okay.
He we grew up playing against each other, like in summer ball and stuff like that. So
Wow.
we know each other from that. And like he, you know, gained tons of weight from when like I knew him in like junior college. So it's not just like what's the big deal, you know, if I'm game ready for like baseball. It's like this extends out to like how you're treating yourself for the rest of your life, what your kids see you doing. Because I firmly believe your kids, they do what you say sometimes, but like they mostly do what you do.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? So it's not a coincidence when overweight parents sometimes can have overweight kids, or like the kid's skinny and it's like, well, how long is that going to last if they're eating what you're eating?
Well, yeah, you set up the food environment at home.
Yeah.
And I see it all the time. Like my 5-year-old will mimic what we say, what we do. You know, it's not, I'm not perfect, but we try to kind of set that like proteins are important and just teaching him about food and why he can't have pizza and nachos all the time, even though he really wants them. It's this shit like that. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
What got you into coaching in the first place? I know you said you liked working out, but what you know crossed the line for you?
Honestly, I think in the beginning it wasn't anything grand. It was the like, wow, CrossFit's exploding. Like we should open a gym. Oh, pairing it with baseball would be amazing with my, you know, with the baseball background of myself and my buddy. Yeah, it wasn't anything grand. It was more like, wow, having a CrossFit gym must be awesome. Because
it was like kind of like the thing.
Yeah. So, but then it became, as I became more educated, I don't know, it's half and half. Everyone wants to be like, oh, I wanted to help people. It's like, sure, you want to help people, but I think you want the fulfillment of being useful in some line of work, right?
Definitely.
If you're a landscaper, you like that you were you know, whatever. If you're a fireman, like it's that feeling
of
of
service to others. Fulfilling.
I personally feel like happiness comes from a sense of usefulness rather than just like asking yourself, am I happy all the time?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
So it started with, oh, this seems awesome, like a hangout, you know, very adolescent thinking. But then it was like, I want to impact people. Along the way, I got sober. So I got sober in 2012. And you know, a little bit of the reason that like spurned that was me being like, even as I was, you know, an alcoholic, being like, you're not a very good example for these people. Because I was a CrossFit coach for a year as an alcoholic.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you manage that?
You know, when you coach, I mean, I've been honest with people. I had one or two instances where I taught classes drunk and people didn't really know. I mean, if you drink enough, like you handle your liquor. Which, you know, in hindsight, it's like, look how much you're risking driving there, people finding out. I had a partner. I mean, it was a really selfish thing to do. You know, fortunately I got sober, and then the idea of at least trying to be an emblem or an example for people as best as I could. Cause you know, you don't get through something like that unscarred in terms of like how you deal with your emotions and like, how do you deal with everything that you were using alcohol to blunt? So, you know, I have a lot of things I had to work through and still do all the time, you know? So, but as it went along, I definitely was like proud of myself. Like, you know what? I knew I'd get sober. I did it. And I feel like I'm this example. If someone walks through here and they're struggling with something else, like, you know, food or whatever, I can at least be like, I know what it's like to be like out of control. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's good and bad, because sometimes I struggle having empathy because I don't find myself to be a remarkable person, and I was able to do it. So I'm like, why can't you do it?
You're kind of like, if I did it, you can.
I'm not like Dwayne Johnson. So it's like, why can't you do it? Like, it really is like the decision to do it. I know it sounds, but people ask me, how'd you do it? I was like, honestly, I woke up one day and knew that was going to be the last time I drank. And I got like an email from my wife that was like another one of those type of emails. And I went over to her apartment because we didn't live in the same place, and I was like, I drank last night. And she was like, I know. And I remember when she told me that, I was like, I remember thinking like, are you going to be this guy for the rest of your life? Like, it wasn't romantic. For a while, I was like, I'll be like Sinatra, the romantic drunk, but it's like, it's not romantic though. Like, so, uh, so yeah, I mean, having the gym was a little bit of the reason I did that. And then it felt good to be that example, that emblem, going forward from there. So I think it's at least good that, you know, I'm coming up on 10 years, and I think it's at least good that I can draw from that. I only tell people that because I want, and I tell clients this because I want them to know, like, I've probably done worse than anything you've done.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, and you can, and it's up to a certain point, you can still come back from it.
Yeah.
You just decide to do it. But again, yeah, it does make me struggle with empathy because I'm kind of like, it is literally the decision to make the change and not look back and just decide you're going to deal with walking through that crap that comes with it.
Yeah. So I have to ask, because this topic's it's brought up often at times, especially on social media.
Yeah.
Because you're sober, you're going on 10 years sober. So you had, obviously there's an addiction there. How do you feel when people talk about sugar as an addiction?
I mean, it doesn't spark anything for me.
You're not like, that's bullshit because I know what addiction feels like?
Maybe a little bit. Like when people say I'm addicted to carbs, I'm addicted to sugar.
Yeah.
I think you can definitely become, it can definitely be a scenario where I'm so used to everything tasting sweet that I start to want it more. And it's hard for me to like break that.
Yep.
Or, you're just eating a lot of carby foods and you're stuck in that cycle of like, they make me feel like crap after, but they make me feel good when I eat them.
Mm-hmm.
Like most of those people don't know what real addiction is, where you just feel like you can't do your day without it, that everything stops mattering other than that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You're willing to, you think everyone else has the problem, not you. And you're willing to sort of let your life burn down to continue doing it.
Yeah, it's a big difference maker between I just need to have a candy bar versus
Reality is you could also kill yourself with food, just like you can with alcohol.
Slower death.
But it's just more socially accepted.
That's one way to put it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is that one weird thing where I kind of tread lightly with this stuff, but if you notice things like you drink too much, you smoke cigarettes, nobody has a problem telling you need to clean that up. But if you're overweight, we really tread lightly about telling someone like, that's unhealthy and I think you need to change. Like you're fat shaming them.
Yeah.
I think that's really problematic because I don't say it in all my posts, but sometimes I'll do like, let me get it out of the way. Your weight has nothing to do with being worthy of being loved and having friends and being a good human being. Now let's move on. Your organs don't care if you're a good person. I think that's can be a real problem. Like I remember the analogy where someone's like, if someone was in a meeting and pulled out a cigarette and started smoking, no one would have a problem being like, that's disgusting. But if an overweight person is eating like a basket of cookies, then you say that's not healthy for you. That's gross.
Yeah.
You're like a bat.
You become a bad person later. Yeah.
I don't know. I think transparency and truthfulness need to come back to, I know this is a weird segue into like the fitness space in terms of, I feel like the fitness space, this is me saying coaches should never be malicious to clients. Agreed. You should always have their best interests in heart. You should always treat them with respect, them treat you with respect. Like you're not a punching bag. But I think the fitness industry has gone so far in the direction of just like coddling in terms of like, don't ask very much of yourself, even though life does, especially parents. Like you guys, that's the toughest job in the world, but they're like, everything is, sort of letting you off the hook for not trying to consistently ask more of yourself, not be perfect.
Yeah.
But being like, hey man, I have a really tough job and like life doesn't care if I'm overwhelmed. I have to find a way to do it. And I just think whether it's the people saying it's fat shaming and diet culture and like don't tell someone to stop doing the things that got them to where they were type of mentality is what keeps people where they are. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yep.
you can be blunt about it and be like, you can't eat and drink those things the way you were and change. And maybe you need to figure out how to have them much less, or figure out the things you can't control and eliminate them, and realize that's how you're going to show up the way you want to in life.
Yeah.
That's really why I kind of landed on like the habits that my approach to coaching was like, look, I'm going to lay it out for you, and we're going to just try to do this and get consistent with it. And we need to stop talking about all this other stuff
Yep.
that doesn't mean anything, and stop talking about, and to be honest, like, let's discuss your feelings, but realize if you try to approach getting healthier based on how you feel, you'll never do anything. Because I don't, like, once it passes 3:00, I don't feel like working out. You know what I mean? Like, most of us still feel like having burgers and onion rings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I took my dogs on a walk yesterday, and there was a Mr. Softy ice cream truck.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I got a milkshake, and I was like, I could have this every day.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, but I was like, I would.
Yeah, but you could.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I think that's part of you touched on a lot of things. And I think part of it, just to go back, is people, I think, love to be a part of something, whether it's diet culture, anti-diet culture. Like, they feel like they need to be a part of a team or something. That's just how we are. It's tribe mentality. I think it's happens way too much in fitness. And yeah, I think the biggest problem is usually it's just the unsolicited advice that goes across online. Like, if people aren't asking for help, don't give it to them. Don't tell them what to do if they're not asking what they should do. I think that's the biggest thing. But I agree. I think there's been too much of a swing of, like, if people want to change, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And they can accept themselves or not. That's on them. That's not on us to tell them.
Yep.
And you're not a lesser person because of your size or color, whatever that stuff, right? But it's on social media, I think I don't say most people, but a ton of coaches are trying to appeal to everyone. Look at how accepting I am of everyone, and you don't have to do this and you don't have to do this. But in reality, you have to change. What got you to this point? You can't keep that up to get you to somewhere else that you've never been before, potentially. If you've never been in shape, the shape you want, fitness level, whatever, what you've been doing isn't going to get you where you want to go. That's just like, that's clear. And that has nothing to do with feelings. It's just fact. And then, like, I talk a lot about motivation with people. And every time someone tells me, like, the limiting factor is their motivation, I'm like, look, it's not your motivation. Like, you're on this call with me because you want to make the change. It's not that. It's you're leaving things up to how you feel every single day, right? I don't feel like my workouts are scheduled for 4 p.m. 4 times a week through Monday to Friday. I don't want to work out at 4 p.m., but it's the best time for me to do that based on my work day. If I went on how I felt, I'd probably just slap on some YouTube videos, watch some, interviews and hockey highlights, and I'll call it a day. So I can't, like, you're right. You cannot leave things up to how you feel. You can address your feelings. I think that's important, but they can't run your life in that sense.
Yeah. And motivation is like a fake tattoo that you have to keep applying over and over again.
I never heard of that.
You know what I mean?
Before. Yeah.
Like, I read something, I can't remember, the quote was something like, motivation is not the cause of action, it's the result of action.
Love it.
You know what I mean? Like, and even then, I think consistently executing habits, you get to the point where you just do it. Like, honestly, meaning, like, if someone's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, say you're tired, it's the end of the day, and you've got some ground meat and some veggies in the fridge, and like some tortillas or whatever, and you made some tacos instead of going to McDonald's. Like, you just did it. Like, that's becoming automatic, where it's like you aren't even like questioning, am I going to go get some crap? Or it's like, oh, I'll just pull out this this chicken breast, and let's make some of this, and let's make some I don't know, I'm trying to make it sound appealing. Like, let's air fry these sweet potatoes and make a salad, and what'd that take us? 15 minutes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't think people are lacking motivation. I think what it is people are lacking a plan, and maybe at least one, and getting more granular on what they want. And then that leads to overwhelm. if you know what you want, if you make a plan, and that's why if you don't know how to make a plan is why you hire a coach.
100%.
It gives you a plan in a direction. But yeah, I think most people, the default, it's very easy to say, I'm just not motivated. You know what I mean? So I don't really know how to address that for each person because I know what they mean. They're just like, I just don't really feel like doing anything. It's like, well, that's because you're thinking of it in terms of like the million things you can look up on Google that you should be doing.
Yeah.
Instead of like, now there is also the idea that you have to want a solution to your problem, or it's almost going to make you angry for you to be presented with options to solve your problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think, getting back to like, I've seen coaches with tons of like followers and they do the thing where they're like, if you're overweight, that doesn't mean you're unhealthy. And I'm like, I think that is very dangerous to say things like that to people because it's a terrible context.
Agreed.
It's like, I've heard about where it's like, you can have clinically obese, metabolically healthy. And supposedly like studies show it's like someone that say maybe they're 40 pounds overweight, but their blood numbers look okay. I saw it's something like that lasts maybe 5 to 20 years. And someone's like, oh, 20 years. That's like, yeah, that means if you're 20 by 40, you're not.
Yeah. Healthy. By 40, you're not
or
lasting
by
to 60.
40, if it's at 30 by 35, it's not good. So any outcomes where you're carrying extra weight, you're not physically active, because being overweight in itself means something's wrong. You're chronically over consuming calories compared to like your activity level. And that only gets worse. Everything gets worse with age. That's not good. Like I have sleep apnea, from drinking, like I wear the mask, so I sleep fine with it.
Yeah.
But they say for some people, sleep apnea can only get worse with age. You have to like adjust your machine.
Wow.
Or like when you're a drinker, the drinking only gets worse. Do you know what I mean? So same thing, like if you're unhealthy, it only gets worse. Like say it's like you're not working out and 20 years later you have diabetes and like a day of eating for you looks like zero protein and like a bunch of Thin Mints.
Yeah.
And then a bowl of pasta and a bunch of TV, So, the program I created, I wanted it to be something where it's like, no nonsense. This is something you can put into your life. Let's not have a huge debate about it. Let's not debate the morality of it. Let's simply plug and play, see what happens. And then you move, like probably what you do. Let's do these things and counter the obstacles. Like, welcome, I've hit a barrier. Okay, cool. Now you and I like collaborate. Like, how do you move through that? And that's all it is. Cause that's what life is too. Like sometimes I feel like a hypocrite talking about that, because I struggle sometimes in the business realm to move through obstacles, but I'm good at helping clients move through them, where it's like, okay, what happened? Like, oh, this happened. Okay, here's some options. Let's try one. I don't even know what's going to happen. Why don't you try that? And let's just see.
Exactly.
Former coach of mine, he's a brilliant coach for OPEX. His name is Michael Mann. He said, everything is an experiment. You sort of know what this 4 weeks of training is going to do, but you also don't.
You won't know until you're doing it, until it's done.
Yeah, let's see what these specific macro prescriptions do for you and what challenges you encounter, or if you feel like you wanted less fat and more carb. But you know what I mean? It's like, choose some simple things to do, just start doing them. And then the biggest one I would say is the consistency side of putting into practice, things that you coach, things that I coach, is you have to put them into play for long enough for them to get consistent and see the impact in your life first.
Yeah.
Like we as coaches, I want you to get to this point where you feel the positive benefits of walking and hydrating. And then you're like, oh, okay.
You never want to give it up after that once you start seeing.
Yeah. The problem is most people get stuck. I feel like most people get stuck in like they're in the first 90 days all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They're fighting the habits. They're not consistent
Yeah.
with them for 90 days, right? They're consistent for 30 out of 90.
Yeah, because it's an identity change. And the big thing is, you'll see all the stuff about like, don't keep someone on a calorie deficit longer than like 12 weeks. So 12 weeks is 12 times 7 is like 84.
Yeah.
Most people do not. I've never done it. I've never done 84 days of actually being in a deficit each day. I've done 30 days of consistently doing it. Honestly, now this is just because I was so good. I think at one point, you know who Mike Dolce is?
Yep.
I did that shred thing and I lost 14 pounds in the 30 days because I was in a deficit for 30 days.
Yeah. Every single day.
I'm not saying that everyone should do that, but I'm saying is like, you get people in deficits, like most people are not in them consistently either.
Well, I think again, the statement of people shouldn't be in a deficit longer than 12 weeks. I think that's just a coverall statement made by coaches to appeal to audiences, being like, yeah, I don't have to diet. You have to be in a deficit for a period of time to lose fat.
Yeah.
And yes, clients will be at maintenance some days because that's just life, be a deficit some days, but it's over the course of, sometimes it's 6 months, over the course of 6 months, maybe with a couple breaks here and there, maybe are you consistently in a weekly deficit? Because it's rare you'll find someone every single day actually hitting a deficit number. It doesn't happen that often. But people say they're in a deficit, right? I think that's the biggest thing too, is like, I've been in a calorie deficit's not working. This is where like, are you actually in a deficit?
No, they're usually at the most, they're in a deficit 4 to 5 days and then they have their weekend. And I just firmly believe, even if it's not about the deficit, that someone reclaiming fitness and health, and that could be like, maybe they didn't really go on a diet. Maybe they upped their activity level and they weren't really overeating. They were overeating based on activity level, and they got stronger and they feel better. I just truly believe like the joy that comes from taking care of yourself and those results are what I think everyone needs to experience. And I feel bad when people won't do it because they're like, don't diet and fat shame me. It's like, I'm actually wanting to move you in a direction where you have more confidence, because when you do something you maybe thought you could never do, that feels really good. Like, I honestly think something better than like seeing your abs is being like, wow, I actually put in the work to
celebrate the effort,
to be like lean and feel good. And I want most people to experience that. So, I just hope eventually we move out of this phase and get to more of like I like the idea of brutal honesty about where you are with a blinding optimism to change. So I don't like I hope we, again, move away from like coddling people who just don't take care of themselves. I don't mean being malicious, but saying like, look, here's where you're at. I totally believe in your ability to change. Like, and as your coach, I'd love to help you and support you. But we're not going to spend all our time talking about how great it all sounds and not doing anything.
That's exactly
it. If you want me to help you. You know what I mean? Like, the best thing a coach can do to like really be a coach is, in a supportive way, not let someone off the hook for the results they came to you for.
I love that.
Because I've had that with clients where I spent 6 months doing a call every week where it was just, it's called like the dance back and forth about, so we're still going to bed at 1 a.m. We're still not drinking water. We're still drinking 6 glasses of wine a week. You know, you're still drinking more wine in grams than you are eating in vegetables, but apparently that's not the problem. You know what I mean?
It's tough.
Yeah, which I get. I mean, some of them I get that these people are depressed. And it's, do you really want to take care of yourself when you're depressed? That's a whole nother can of worms.
That's a whole nother,
We're not psychiatrists. But I've dealt with that stuff in my 20s too. So I can tell people, hey, I know how you feel. It's tough. But unfortunately, all the things you don't want to do, and I get that feeling of like, I don't want to do any of that, are all the things that if you do them, you won't feel like this anymore.
It's true.
Or you'll start to feel like this less.
And with your coaching, it's one by one habit. You're not trying to implement 6 new things at a time. It's like, let's stack them. Let's drink more water. let's go for some walks.
Well, honestly, I'll be honest. In my 12-week program, I do a shotgun, and I say, here are the habits. Here's your training. I want you, and what I do is they get a habit tracker. I go like old school, like bubble it in.
Nice.
And I say, this isn't do these or you failed. This is like record what you're doing. It's like, imagine someone was following you around with you on YouTube, other than shower in the bathroom and like when you go to bed,
sleep. Yeah.
And they followed you around, and all I could see is like, okay, here's his meal 1, 2, and 3. Okay, he had some water. Okay, he went for a walk. He did his training. I just want you to bubble in what you're doing, and then we can look at, okay, you haven't done any of the walks.
Then we know.
But you're crushing it on water and like 5 minutes of meditation a day. Yeah. So I want you to continue, like hold the line, and let's focus, like put in your calendar when you're going to do a walk and start doing it. So it's just basically a record of what's falling behind, and let's bring it up. Because some people always have a thing they're doing well. Yeah. I've never had a client be like, I'm not doing any of them. I have them where they're like, been drinking more water, and I've been doing like 3 10-minute walks or whatever. They find a way, but they might be like, yeah, I didn't do the meditation. Oh, I'm still not eating breakfast. So we're like, okay, well, we know where to go, right?
Exactly.
And you get to the point where they're mostly automatic, not perfect, and you never really veer that far off from them because they start to become a part of your identity. And I consider things part of your identity where you can't go more than a few days without doing them and it bothering you because you're like, this is what feel like. For me, it's exercise.
Yeah, me too.
I can maybe do a day or two. And I don't mean crushing training. It might be like riding the bike and jumping rope. You know what I mean? I can't do more than like a day or two without doing something. And usually that's few and far between that I go more than a day, because I have 3 days a week full body, and then otherwise it's aerobic.
Yeah.
So that's where you want to get people to, is like where it's mostly automatic, ingrained in your life, like wiping your butt, brushing your teeth, tying your shoes. So I tell people, I was like, you feed your kids, right? You go to work, you pay the bills, like you lock the door when you leave. You know, like all those things became habits and now require less energy. So you want to get people to the point where the mental energy required to execute those is not so high that feelings come into the picture.
Yeah.
Because when it's really high, then they're like, do I feel like doing it? When the mental energy is really low, they're like, of course I'm going to wipe my butt.
Just
like,
do it, whatever.
You could not. You like, seriously though, you could not.
You could not.
You could not.
You could not.
It's not a negotiable. You want things that aren't negotiables, where you get to the point where you're like, there needs to be an act of God for me to not take care of myself.
I love it. Yeah, so, man. I gotta run. I got a hard stop. But where can everyone find you? Shameless plug time with the podcast, man.
Yeah, Lucas Brian Robinson on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to email me, lucasrobinsonstrength@gmail.com. That's about it.
And I'll put all the links in the show notes. Are you with your 12-week program, are you accepting new clients right now?
Yeah, I'm accepting new clients all the time. I'll start kind of putting out more stuff, actually saying that, like this week is the end for one of the clients. The second guy going through it is done in about 4 weeks, but I'm going to start doing more of those direct, like, hey, I'd like to help some more of you dads out there that train at home, especially as we come into summer and your shirt's going to be off more.
Yep.
Everyone likes to feel more confident. So,
So you're helping dads who work out from home specifically, right?
Yeah. Dads who train at home. And just real fast, is the reason for that is I like removing the barrier of I couldn't get to the gym, because that's a real issue. Yep. And with a tiny investment in equipment or with existing equipment, I wrote the program to be able to be done honestly with 3 pieces of equipment that it's like under $1,000.
Beautiful.
All of them.
And will last forever. That's the best thing.
Oh yeah. And they have good resale value if you take care of them.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Lucas, thanks again for taking the time, man. I appreciate the chat. And everyone listening, thanks. Go check out Lucas's page. If you're a dad training from home and you need that accountability, you want to get in shape this summer, Lucas is your man. Reach out to him. Thanks, guys.